On the evening of September 23rd, Teresa Wilson Bean Lewis was put to death by lethal injection at the Greensville Correctional Center in Virginia. She was 41 years old and had spent almost 8 years on death row. Her execution became a historic moment, the first time in 98 years that a woman was executed in the state of Virginia. The case of Teresa Lewis drew national attention, sparking intense debate over the brutality of her crimes and the justice of her punishment. But before we look at her final hours, we must first understand the chain of events that led her to death row. As the final countdown begins, Teresa Lewis is about to make history, becoming the first woman executed in Virginia in nearly a century. Teresa Wilson Bean Lewis was born on April 26, 1969, in Danville, Virginia, into a family struggling with poverty. Her parents worked long hours at a textile factory, and Teresa grew up in an environment that was both emotionally and financially deprived. As a teenager, she often sang in her local church, and it was there that she met the man who would later become her husband. But as she grew older, Teresa began to show signs of deep emotional and mental instability. She was overly dependent on others, struggled to make her own decisions, and often behaved immaturely. Psychological evaluations later revealed her IQ ranged between 70 and 72, placing her in the borderline intellectual category. She was diagnosed with dependent personality disorder and, after several surgeries for endometriosis, developed a serious addiction to prescription painkillers. The death of her mother further destabilized her, pushing her deeper into depression and drug abuse. By the spring of 2000, Teresa found work at the Dan River Textile Factory, where she met Julian Clifton Lewis Jr., her supervisor, a man who had recently lost his wife of nearly 30 years. Julian was a widower with 3 grown children, Jason, Charles, and Kathy. Their relationship moved quickly. By June, Teresa and her teenage daughter, Christy, had moved into Julian's home, and soon after, the two married. On the surface, it seemed like a fresh start, but beneath that calm exterior, something dark was forming. In December 2001, tragedy struck when Julian's eldest son, Jason, died in a car accident. He left behind a $200,000 life insurance policy, which Julian used to buy a manufactured home in Pittsylvania County, Virginia. Then in August 2002, Julian's youngest son, Charles C.J. Lewis, took out a $250,000 life insurance policy ahead of his deployment to Iraq. Julian was named the primary beneficiary, Teresa the secondary. She was fully aware of this arrangement and soon realized that if both men were gone, the money could fall to her. That same fall, Teresa met Matthew Jesse Schallenberger, 21, and Rodney Lamont Fuller, 19, while standing in line at a Walmart in Danville. She began sexual relationships with both men. According to court records, Teresa told friends her marriage to Julian was for money, not love. Then came October 23, 2002. With time running out and greed taking full control, Teresa finalized her deadly plan. She gave Schallenberger and Fuller $1,200 to buy guns and ammunition. Their first attempt to kill Julian while he was driving failed. A week later, in the early hours of October 30th, Teresa deliberately left the back door unlocked. Around 3 a.m., Schallenberger and Fuller quietly entered the trailer. While Teresa waited in the kitchen, Schallenberger entered the bedroom and shot Julian multiple times. In another room, Fuller shot CJ as he slept. When the young man showed signs of life, Fuller fired twice more. After the shooting, Teresa entered the bedroom, took Julian's wallet and pants, and calmly returned to the kitchen while the men divided $300 they found inside. Teresa waited 45 minutes before calling 911. When deputies arrived at 4:18 a.m., Julian was still alive. In his final breaths, he managed to say, "My wife knows who did this to me." The plan quickly unraveled. Teresa tried to withdraw $50,000 using a forged check, but failed. Under pressure, she confessed to paying Schallenberger to murder her husband. On May 15, 2003, Teresa pleaded guilty to 2 counts of capital murder for hire, conspiracy, robbery, and firearm charges. Her lawyer hoped this plea would spare her from the death penalty, but on June 3rd, Judge Charles Strauss sentenced her to death, describing her as the head of this serpent and noting her cold, emotionless demeanor. Controversy soon followed. Her defense argued that Teresa's IQ of 72, dependent personality, and severe addiction made her easily manipulated by others, especially by Schallenberger, who later claimed he was the mastermind behind the plot. In a prison letter to his girlfriend, Schallenberger wrote, "Teresa was exactly what I was looking for. A not-so-bright woman who married for money, and who I knew I could easily make fall in love with me." Fuller, the other shooter, agreed, stating, "Mrs. Lewis would have done anything Schallenberger told her to do." Ironically, the two men who pulled the triggers were sentenced to life in prison, while Teresa, who never fired a shot, received the death penalty. Schallenberger later died by suicide in 2006, further fueling the controversy surrounding her case. Public opinion was divided. Over 7,300 clemency petitions were sent to the governor, including one from author John Grisham. Even the European Union, the French government, and Iranian President Mahmoud Ahmadinejad pleaded for her life. None succeeded. On September 19, 2010, the U.S. Supreme Court denied her final appeal. In her final days, Teresa turned deeply to faith, singing hymns, praying, and comforting fellow inmates. Prison staff described her as a source of peace and compassion. For her last meal, she requested 2 fried chicken breasts, buttered sweet peas, German chocolate cake, apple pie, and a Dr. Pepper. At 9:13 p.m. on September 23, 2010, Teresa Lewis was executed by lethal injection at Greensville Correctional Center. Witnesses said she looked frightened but calm as a guard gently patted her shoulder before the drugs took effect. Her final words were directed to her stepdaughter, Kathy Clifton, the only surviving child of Julian Lewis. "I want Kathy to know that I love her and I am very sorry." Kathy, who witnessed the execution, said afterward, "Honestly, I can't say one way or the other about her." Outside the prison, protesters gathered, some demanding justice, others denouncing the execution. Teresa Lewis became the first woman executed in Virginia since 1912 and the first in the U.S. since 2005, the 12th woman executed nationwide since the reinstatement of the death penalty in 1976. She was officially pronounced dead at 9:13 p.m., closing one of Virginia's most haunting cases. Her story continues to spark debate over justice, mercy, and mental capacity, especially after Virginia officially abolished the death penalty in 2021, making Teresa Lewis the last woman ever executed in the state. What do you think about the execution that just took place? Do you believe it was just or not? Let me know in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe to keep up with the next executions.